Amara Okafor's blood-stained fingers trembled against a cracked phone screen as she pressed herself deeper into the supply closet on the 47th floor of Hanson Tower. Her left wrist hung at an angle that wasn't supposed to exist, bone pushing against skin like it was trying to escape. The cleaning chemicals around her smelled like bleach and pine, but underneath it all she could smell her own blood, copper and warm, dripping from the gash above her eyebrow onto the collar of the white blouse she'd ironed this morning at 5 a.m., before her son woke up. Her right knee throbbed where the marble corner of Marcus's desk had caught her when he threw her across his office. The skin on her elbow was scraped raw. She could feel something wrong with her ribs, a sharp, breathless wrongness that made every inhale feel like swallowing glass. The supply closet door was thin. She knew it was thin because she'd been the one who ordered it 3 years ago, back when she was just a new executive assistant and Marcus Hanson, CEO of Hanson Capital Group, had told her with a charming smile that he wanted her to make this floor feel like home. She'd married him 6 months later. She'd been bleeding ever since. Amara, his voice slid through the door like oil. "Sweetheart, I know you're in there. I can hear you breathing." She covered her mouth. Her 7-month-old son, Kai, was at her sister Dee's apartment in Queens. Thank God he wasn't here. Thank God he hadn't seen Daddy's face change when Amara had finally said the word divorce at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in an empty corporate skyscraper where the security guards all work for Marcus and the cameras on this floor have been mysteriously offline for the last 40 minutes. If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. "You're being dramatic," Marcus said, his voice dropping into that velvet register she knew came right before the worst of it. "Open the door. We'll talk. You know I love you." Her phone buzzed in her shaking hand. The screen was smeared with red. She had 4% battery. She needed her sister. Adiz would know what to do. Adiz had begged her to leave Marcus a year ago, 2 years ago, every Sunday phone call. Adiz had a friend who worked at a women's shelter in the Bronx. Adiz had a guest room and a couch and a heart big enough to hold both Amara and her son until they could figure out how to disappear. Amara's thumb scrolled through her contacts. Everything blurred. Tears, blood, terror. Her vision was a smudge of impossible. She tapped what she thought was Adiz's name and typed with one shaking finger. "Send help. I'm still in the building. Marcus is going to kill me. Hanson Tower, 47th floor. Supply closet. Please come get me, please." She hit send. The door handle rattled. Marcus's voice had stopped pretending. "I'm going to count to 5. Her phone buzzed. "Who is this?" Amara's heart stopped beating, then started again, too fast, too hard. She looked at the contact name at the top of the message thread. HW Tower, Mr. D. She had no memory of saving that number. None. Her thumbs flew, frantic, breaking the screen further with how hard she was pressing. Wrong number. "Sorry, my husband is going to kill me. Hanson Tower, 47th floor. Supply closet near the east elevators. Please don't hang up, please. 3 seconds. 5, 7. Stay exactly where you are. Don't make a sound. I'm 11 minutes away. I'm coming." Amara pressed the phone to her chest and tried not to sob. 1. Marcus said, "Welcome to the channel where survival is a love language, and the men who come when you call don't ask permission to stay. If you're new here, you're about to watch a wrong number text rewrite an entire woman's life. And if you're already part of this family, you know exactly what happens next. Buckle in, because the man who just got that text isn't who Amara thinks he is, and the building she's bleeding in isn't who Marcus thinks owns it. Hit that like button if you've ever been one bad night away from changing everything. Smash that subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Lagos, London, Atlanta, Nairobi. I see you. Now let's get back to that supply closet, because the door is about to come down, just not the way Marcus thinks. 2. Amara closed her eyes. She thought about Kai, his tiny fist around her finger this morning. The way he laughed when she sang the Igbo lullaby her mother had sung to her. The way his eyelashes lay against his cheek. When he slept, if Marcus killed her tonight, her son would grow up not remembering her face. 3. The deportation papers were in Marcus's safe. He'd shown them to her last month with a smile. You think you can leave me, Amara? You think a Nigerian girl with no green card and a baby is going anywhere? I'll have you on a plane back to Lagos before sunrise, and Kai stays with me. You'll never see him again. She had stayed. She had stayed because she had no choice. She had stayed because every immigration lawyer cost money she didn't have, because every shelter required documents Marcus controlled, because every escape route had been mapped and blocked by a man who treated controlling women like a hobby. But tonight, she had said the word divorce. Tonight she had finally, stupidly, miraculously said it out loud. And tonight Marcus had decided that if he couldn't have her, no one would. Her phone buzzed. I'm in the elevator. Stay down. She didn't understand. The man, whoever he was, had said 11 minutes. It had been 3. For at most, no one could have gotten to Hanson Tower from anywhere in Manhattan that fast. No one except 5. The closet door exploded inward. Marcus filled the doorway. 6'3" of finance bro rage, his Italian dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, his expensive cologne mixing with the sour smell of whiskey. His face was the face Amara had learned to fear 3 years ago and had been hiding from her son ever since. Empty eyes, wet mouth, the face of a man who had decided. There you are, he said softly. His hand closed around her hair that he'd once said he loved, her hair that she now wore in protective styles because he liked grabbing it. And he dragged her out of the closet by it, her broken wrists screaming, her ribs grinding against each other. You think you can leave me? Marcus slammed her against the glass wall of his office. The skyline of Manhattan glittered behind her, indifferent. You think after everything I've given you, the apartment, the visa, the life, you can just walk out? Marcus, please. Please, what? His hand wrapped around her throat. Please don't kill you? Please let you take my son to your sister's filthy apartment in Queens? Please give you the divorce, so you can take half of everything I built. His grip tightened. Amara's vision started to fade at the edges. You want to know what's going to happen, sweetheart? Marcus whispered. You're going to fall. From this window. 47 floors. And tomorrow morning the news will say poor Marcus Hanson lost his unstable Nigerian wife to suicide. Postpartum depression. Tragic, really. They'll write articles about it. I'll cry on television. And our son, my son, will grow up knowing his mother was too weak to. The elevator chimed. Marcus froze. The 47th floor was supposed to be empty. The 47th floor was his floor, his personal floor, the floor where his cameras were broken, and his security knew not to come. He let go of Amara's throat. She crumpled against the glass, gasping, her hand going automatically to her bruised neck. Footsteps, slow, deliberate, the sound of someone walking toward Marcus's corner office without urgency, without fear, the way a man walks when he owns every inch of ground beneath his feet. Who's there? Marcus shouted. He was already reaching for the gun he kept in his desk drawer. The gun Amara had cleaned for him 100 times because she was a good wife who took care of her husband's things. This is private property. I'll have you arrested. The footsteps didn't stop. A man stepped into the doorway. He was tall, not as tall as Marcus, but tall in a way that didn't need height to fill a room. Black coat, charcoal silk suit underneath, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. His hair was sharp at the edges, recent cut, expensive barber. His face was angles. Cheekbones, jaw, the bridge of a nose that had been broken once and reset perfectly. He looked Korean. He looked 35, maybe 38. He looked like he had walked out of the kind of dream Amara had stopped allowing herself to have. But it was his eyes that made her forget her broken wrist for one full second. Black, empty, patient, the eyes of a man who had just heard everything Marcus had said through the supply closet door and had already decided what was going to happen next. Mr. Hanson. His voice was quiet, slight accent, the kind of voice that didn't need to be raised because it had never, in its entire life, been ignored. I'm Daejin Park. Marcus's gun came up. Get out. I don't know who you are, but you do know who I am. Daejin took one step into the office. You signed a 15-year lease on the 47th floor of my building 4 years ago. Hanson Capital Group has been my tenant since then. Another step. You're 3 months behind on rent. Marcus's gun hand wavered. You're building? My family's holding company owns Hanson Tower. We have since 2019. Daejin's eyes flicked, just once, to Amara, bleeding, broken, slumped against the glass, and something passed across his face that was not pity. It was colder than pity. It was older than pity, including the supply closet your wife is currently bleeding in. You can't just... Mr. Hanson. Daejin took one more step, put the gun down. I'll shoot. Daejin smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Amara had ever seen on a human face. No, he said. You won't. Marcus pulled the trigger. The gun didn't fire. He pulled it again. Click, click. Daejin moved. Amara didn't see exactly what happened. One moment Daejin was in the doorway. The next he was beside Marcus, and Marcus's gun hand was bent at an angle Amara recognized. The same angle her own wrist was currently bent at, the angle of the bone that had decided it was tired of being a bone. Marcus screamed. The gun clattered to the floor. Daejin caught Marcus by the collar of his $1,000 shirt and slammed him face first into the desk. The sound was not unlike the sound Amara's nose had made the first time Marcus broke it. Marcus crumpled. He stayed down. Daejin stepped over him without looking and crossed the office to Amara. He stopped 3 feet away. He did not reach for her. He did not crowd her. He just looked down at her. Really looked. The way no man had looked at her in 3 years. And Amara watched the empty thing in his eyes shift, just slightly, into something that was still empty, but was now empty for her. Amara. He said her name like he had said it 1,000 times before in a quiet room she'd never been in. I'm going to pick you up now. I'm going to take you out of this building. Is that all right? She tried to speak. Her throat was bruised. Nothing came out. She nodded. He took off his coat, black cashmere, still warm, and draped it around her shoulders. He bent down. He slid one arm under her knees, the other around her back, and lifted her like she weighed nothing. He smelled like cedar and something darker, something expensive, something safe. As he carried her out of Marcus's office, past Marcus's unconscious body, Amara saw 4 men in tactical black step out of the elevator. They didn't look at her. They walked into Marcus's office. The door closed behind them. In the elevator going down, Daejin spoke quietly into a phone in Korean. Amara didn't understand the words, but she understood the tone. The tone said, handle this completely. The tone said, no questions when this is over. When he hung up, she finally found her voice. Who are you? She whispered. How did you know my name? Daejin looked down at her. His face was very close to hers. She could see the faint scar through his left eyebrow. I've known your name for 3 years, Amara. His arm tightened slightly around her back. I just didn't know I was going to get to use it. The elevator hit the ground floor. The doors opened to a black SUV idling at the lobby entrance. 2 more men in tactical gear standing beside it. He carried her out into the cold New York night, and Amara, bleeding, broken, 3 years of Marcus Hanson finally slipping off her shoulders, let herself rest her head against his chest for the first time in her entire life. If you're feeling what Amara's feeling right now, that first breath of air after years of drowning, drop a heart emoji in the comments. Type, I see her. If you've ever needed to disappear from a man who promised to love you, we're not even halfway through this story. Family. And what comes next is going to break your heart and put it back together stronger. Hit subscribe if you haven't yet. It's free. It costs you nothing, and it tells me to keep telling these stories. Now back to Amara, who's about to wake up in a place she's never been, in clothes she's never owned, beside a man who's been watching her for 3 years she didn't know about. Amara woke to silence. Not New York silence. That paper-thin layer of quiet stretched over the constant hum of sirens and traffic and 12 million people breathing at once. This was real silence. Country silence. The kind of silence that meant trees and distance and walls thick enough to keep the world out. She opened her eyes. The ceiling above her was high, coffered, dark wood, the kind of architecture that whispered old money. Her left arm was in a sleek black cast that looked more like a piece of jewelry than a medical device. Her ribs were taped. There was an four in her right hand connected to a clear bag hanging from a stand. The pain that should have been screaming through her body was a distant murmur, dulled by whatever was dripping into her veins. The bed was enormous. Silk sheets the color of pale gold. A duvet that felt like a cloud. Pillows arranged with the kind of precision that meant someone had been paid to arrange them. She was wearing a nightgown she'd never seen before. Cream silk. Long sleeves. The fabric draped over her bandages without touching them. "Kai!" she whispered. The door opened immediately. A woman stepped in. Korean, mid-50s, wearing a tailored navy dress and the calm, alert expression of a professional caretaker. She was carrying a tray. "Mrs. Hanson, you're awake. Good." Her English was lightly accented. "Perfect. I'm Dr. Yumi Choi. I've been monitoring you for the last 14 hours. My son is safe." Dr. Choi set the tray on the bedside table. "Your sister, Adiz, was contacted last night at 11:43 p.m. by a member of Mr. Park's security team. Your son is still with her. She's been told that you're in the hospital recovering from injuries sustained during a domestic incident. She has been provided with a security escort. She is fine. Your son is fine." Amara's eyes filled. "I need to see him." "You will. Mr. Park has arranged for your sister and son to be brought here this afternoon, if that's what you want." Dr. Choi handed her a glass of water with a straw. "Drink. Slowly. You were severely dehydrated." Amara drank. The water was cold and clean and tasted like nothing had ever tasted in her entire life. "Where am I?" "Mr. Park's estate. Approximately 90 minutes north of Manhattan. You're safe here. No one comes onto this property without his permission. Marcus." Dr. Choi's face did something interesting. It did not change, but something behind it changed. "Your husband is currently in police custody," she said carefully. At approximately 2 a.m., an anonymous tip was made to the FBI's white-collar crime division regarding extensive financial fraud at Hanson Capital Group. By 4 a.m., federal investigators were at a Tribeca apartment with a warrant. They found, among other things, evidence that Mr. Hanson had been laundering money for 3 different offshore entities, and that he had recently attempted to liquidate over $40 million in client funds. Amara stared at her. Marcus didn't. Mr. Hanson is being charged with 12 counts of wire fraud, 4 counts of money laundering, and 1 count of attempted murder. The attempted murder charge is supported by security camera footage from the 47th floor of Hanson Tower, which apparently was not, in fact, offline last night, despite Mr. Hanson's beliefs to the contrary. Dr. Choi straightened the corner of a duvet. He will not be released on bail. He will not be making phone calls. He will not be coming for you, Mrs. Hanson. Don't. Amara's voice cracked. Don't call me that. Please. Dr. Choi nodded once. Ms. Okafor. The door opened again. Daejin Park stepped into the room. He had changed clothes. Black slacks, a charcoal sweater. Sleeves pushed his forearms. Amara could see now what she hadn't seen in the chaos of the office last night. The tattoos. Dragons. Black ink crawling up from beneath his collar onto the side of his neck. More disappearing under his sleeves. Old work. Detailed. The kind of tattoos that meant something specific in places where tattoos had to mean something specific. He stopped at the foot of her bed. Dr. Choi quietly excused herself and closed the door. For a long moment, Daejin just looked at her. You said you've known my name for 3 years, Amara whispered. I have. How? He moved the chair beside her bed and sat down. Not too close. Not too far. The distance of a man who understood exactly what space a woman with a broken wrist and a broken life needed. 3 years ago, he said, I bought Hanson Tower from a man who was going bankrupt. The deal closed on a Tuesday. On Wednesday, I went to the building to see what I'd purchased. I rode the elevator to the lobby. I was reading something on my phone. A woman walked past me, going the other way, and she was holding a wedding invitation. She was crying. Quiet, careful crying. The kind a woman does when she has just realized something she cannot take back. Amara's breath caught. I asked her if she was all right. She looked up at me. She said, I'm fine. I'm just getting married next week. And then she laughed. the laugh of a woman who already knew. Daejin's eyes did not leave hers. I asked her name. She said, Amara Okafor. Soon to be Hanson, I guess. She walked away, and I went in my office and pulled the records of every tenant in my new building, and I found out that the executive assistant to the CEO of Hanson Capital Group, a Nigerian woman on a work visa, had just got engaged to her boss. Amara's chest hurt, a different hurt than the ribs. You don't remember meeting me, he said. I didn't expect you to. She swallowed. There was a man in the lobby. I remember a man. I thought you were beautiful. His mouth moved, almost a smile. You said it under your breath. You didn't think I heard. Amara closed her eyes. I started watching. Daejin continued quietly. Not in any way you would have known. The cameras in the building. The hospital records when you stopped showing up to work for a week and came back with a brace on your knee. The 911 calls from your apartment that always got canceled before officers arrived. The pediatrician's office records when you had your son and brought him in for his first checkup with a black eye that wasn't his. You watched me. Amara opened her eyes. For 3 years. I watched what was being done to you for 3 years. Daejin's voice was very soft. Every month I told myself I would intervene. Every month I told myself it wasn't my place. You had made a choice. You had said yes to him. I am not a man who takes what isn't offered. Amara, I am many things, but not that. Then why now? Because you sent the text. His eyes were absolutely steady on hers. Because for 3 years I waited for you to ask, and last night, finally, you did. Even if you didn't know who you were asking. Even if it was a wrong number. The universe gave me permission, and I took it. Amara's tears were falling now. She didn't try to stop them. There's something I need to ask you, Daejin said, and the answer determines what happens next. So I need you to think carefully before you answer. She nodded. What do you want, Amara? She stared at him. Not what should you want. Not what would be safe. Not what would be reasonable. What do you want? Right now. From this moment forward. From your life. She thought about Kai. She thought about her sister. She thought about her mother in Lagos who had warned her, gently warned her, about marrying a man who was too charming. She thought about 3 years of her own face in the mirror, getting smaller and smaller. I want my son safe, she said. I want my visa. I want Marcus to never touch me again. I want to... Her voice broke. I want to be a person again. I don't even remember what I was before him. Daejin nodded once. Then that, he said, is what you'll have? Drop, she deserves it. In the comments of Amara deserves every single thing she just asked for and more. Like this video, if you needed to hear someone tell a woman to choose herself. We're just getting started. Because Marcus may be in custody, but his family has lawyers, and his lawyers have stories. And Amara's about to find out that getting free isn't the same as staying free. Stay with me. 3 days later, Amara watched her own face on television. She was sitting up in bed now, her ribs taped tighter, her wrists resting in the sleek black cast Dr. Choi had said she could remove in 6 weeks. Kai was asleep on her chest, his small fist curled against the silk of her nightgown, his breathing the steady, untroubled breath of a baby who was finally home with his mother in a safe place. Adiz was sitting in the chair beside the bed, holding Amara's good hand, her eyes red from crying for 2 days straight. The television was muted. The headline along the bottom of the screen was not. Hanson Capital Group CEO Marcus Hanson. Victim of framing by a strange wife? New evidence emerges. Marcus's face filled the screen. He looked good. They'd let him shave. He was wearing a navy suit. He was sitting beside a woman Amara recognized, Patricia Hanson, his mother, 62 years old. Hair like a helmet. The kind of Connecticut wasp money that had bought Marcus out of 3 DUIs in college. Turn it up, Amara said quietly. Adiz hesitated. Sis, you don't need to. Turn it up. The volume came on. Horrifying experience for our family, Patricia was saying, dabbing at perfectly dry eyes. Marcus has been a devoted husband to Amara for 3 years. He brought her into our family. He helped her get her green card. He paid for her sister's apartment in Queens. And this is how she repays him? by fabricating abuse allegations and conspiring with a known criminal organization to frame my son for crimes he did not commit. The reporter, a thin white woman with a careful expression, turned to Marcus. Mr. Hanson, do you have any response to security footage that's been released? Marcus's face did a remarkable thing. It performed grief. I love my wife. His voice cracked perfectly. I have loved my wife from the moment I met her. The footage that's been released has been edited. It does not show the full context. It does not show that Amara has been struggling with severe postpartum depression for the last 7 months. It does not show that she has been making increasingly erratic accusations against me for over a year. It does not show that I have been begging her to seek psychiatric help. Amara's good hand tightened on Adiz. My wife, Marcus continued, his voice trembling beautifully, is not well. She is being manipulated by a man named Daejin Park, who has a long history of preying on vulnerable women. I am terrified for her. I am terrified for my son. I am asking, begging, anyone who knows where she is, please bring her home. She needs medical care. She needs her family. And our son needs his mother to get the help she desperately needs before it's too late. The screen cut to footage of Daejin. Old footage. Grainy. Him walking out of a building in Seoul, his face partially obscured. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. The reporter's voice. Daejin Park, who is reportedly the head of the Park family's American holdings, has been linked to several investigations into organized crime activity in the New York metropolitan area. Sources tell us that federal authorities are now investigating whether Mr. Park may have orchestrated the framing of Marcus Hanson as part of a larger pattern of financial extortion. Adiz made a sound, a choked, furious sound. They're flipping it, she whispered. Sis, they're flipping the whole thing on you. The bedroom door opened. Daejin stood in the doorway in a black turtleneck and gray trousers, his hair slightly damp like he'd just come from somewhere outside. He saw the television. He saw Amara's face. He crossed the room and turned the TV off. How much did you see? He asked quietly. Enough. Amara couldn't look at him. He's calling me crazy. His mother is on television calling me crazy. They're saying you manipulated me. Yes. They're going to take Kai. Amara's voice was rising. The panic she'd been holding for 3 days finally breaking through. They're going to say I'm an unfit mother. Patricia has lawyers. Marcus has lawyers. I have a broken wrist and a Nigerian passport, and they're going to take my son. Amara, Daejin's voice cut through it. Quiet. Absolute. Look at me. She did. You are not going to lose your son. You are not going to be deported. Marcus is not going to come within 1,000 feet of you ever again. He sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to disturb Kai. I told you what you asked me 3 days ago. I told you what you wanted. I am not a man who asks twice, and I am not a man who fails at what I promise. How? Adiz said, the first time she'd spoken since Daejin entered. How do you stop the Hansons? They have money, Mr. Park. They have generational money. Old New York money. The kind of money that owns judges. Daejin looked at Adiz. He smiled faintly. Ms. Okafor, he said, I respect your concern for your sister very much. So I will say this once, with no disrespect. The Hansons have $100 million. I have considerably more than that. The Hansons have lawyers. I have the man who trains their lawyers. The Hansons have judges who took bribes in 2007 and haven't slept well since. I have records of every one of those bribes. The Hansons have a story. I have evidence. He looked back at Amara. And more importantly, he said, the Hansons think they're playing a chess game. They don't understand that I burned the chessboard down 4 years ago when I bought their son's building, and I have been waiting patiently for the moment when he would finally reach for something that was mine. Amara's throat closed. Yours, she whispered. Daejin held her eyes. You were never going to be his, Amara. His voice was very soft. Not really. Not in any way that mattered. You just hadn't been told yet. The next morning, Patricia Hanson called Amara's cell phone. Amara didn't know how she had the number. She suspected she'd had it for years. Amara, sweetheart. Patricia's voice was syrup poured over a knife. I think we should talk. Woman to woman. Mother to mother. Amara was sitting in the estate's library, a room with floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over snow-covered grounds. Daejin was across the room, reading something on his laptop, but Amara knew from the angle of his shoulders that every word of this conversation was being heard. What do you want, Patricia? I want you to come home, dear. I want this to end. Marcus loves you. He's sick with worry. He hasn't slept since you left. I know there have been misunderstandings. I know my son has a temper sometimes. His father had one, too. It's hereditary, you understand. But he loves you, Amara. He loves Kai. And he is willing to be very generous if you come home today and issue a statement saying you've reconciled. Generous how? A pause. Patricia hadn't expected the question. $5 million in your name. A trust for Kai. Permanent residency paperwork expedited. A house in the Hamptons. If you want it, you could have a beautiful life. Amara, you could be a Hanson. Really be one. I would welcome you into the family in a way I haven't been able before. And if I don't... The silence was long. Sweetheart. Patricia's voice had cooled. Let me be very honest with you. I have spent 40 years making problems disappear from my family. I have made bigger problems than you disappear, and I've made them disappear faster than you can imagine. If you do not come home voluntarily by tomorrow morning, I will use every resource I have to ensure that the State Department, IC, the family court system, and the New York Times know that Amara Okafor is an unstable foreign national who has kidnapped my grandson and is being held by a known organized crime figure. Your son will be taken into emergency protective custody by Tuesday. You will be in a detention facility by Friday. You will be on a plane to Lagos by the following Monday. And your sister, sweet little Adiz, will be facing federal charges for harboring a fugitive. Amara's hand was shaking. You don't have to make this hard, dear. Marcus has forgiven you. The family will forgive you. We just need you home. Amara looked across the room at Daejin. He was already looking at her. He had set the laptop down. His face was very calm. He nodded once, a small nod that said, Your call. Whatever you decide, I will handle it. Amara took a breath. Patricia, she said, can I tell you something? Of course, dear. I came to this country when I was 22 years old. I had $300 and a suitcase. I worked 2 jobs while I got my MBA. I learned to laugh at jokes I didn't understand. I learned to make myself smaller, so men like your son would feel comfortable. I changed my hair, my clothes, the way I ate, the way I prayed, the way I spoke. I gave up so much of who I was at when I had my son. I cried, because I realized I didn't know what kind of woman I was going to teach him his mother had been. Amara... I'm not finished, Patricia. Amara's voice was steady. I am 31 years old. I have a broken wrist that your son gave me. I have 3 broken ribs that your son gave me. I have a scar on my eyebrow that your son gave me 3 days before our wedding, and I covered it with foundation, and I smiled in the photos. I have spent 3 years apologizing for existing in a marriage to a man your family raised to believe that women are inventory. So when you offer me $5 million and a house in the Hamptons to come back and be a Hanson, what you're really telling me is that you know exactly what your son is, and you have known the entire time, and you have always been willing to pay women to keep being beaten by him. Silence. I am not coming home, Amara said. I am not your daughter-in-law. I am not your son's wife. I am Amara Okafor, and the next time you call me, you're going to be calling my lawyer. She hung up. She set the phone down on the coffee table. Her hand was shaking so badly she had to clasp it in her good one to make it stop. Daejin crossed the room. He didn't say anything. He just sat down beside her on the couch, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, and he waited. She's going to do all of it, Amara whispered. Everything she said. She's going to call IC. She's going to call the press. She already started. Daejin's voice was quiet. She filed the paperwork yesterday. The IC detention request was made through a contact at the State Department this morning at 7:14 a.m. The press release was scheduled to drop tomorrow at 9 a.m. Amara stared at him. Don't worry, he said. It's not going to drop. How do you... Patricia Hanson made one mistake. Amara, she thought she had time. She thought she could threaten you for 24 hours and you would break. She didn't understand that the moment Marcus put his hands on you in my building, she stopped having time. He turned to look at her fully. I have a friend at the State Department who owes me a very large favor. Your green card application has been expedited. You'll have permanent residency by the end of the week. The IC detention request has been flagged as fraudulent and is being investigated as harassment of a domestic abuse survivor. The press release is dead. And Patricia Hanson. He paused. Patricia Hanson is currently being informed by her own attorney that the FBI has just opened an investigation into the Hanson Family Foundation for tax fraud going back 12 years. Her attorney is a man named Robert Chun. Mr. Chun and I have known each other for a long time. Mr. Chun will be giving Patricia very honest advice about what is going to happen if she does not immediately and permanently retract every threat she just made to my woman. Amara couldn't breathe. Your woman, she whispered. Daejin looked at her. Was that the wrong word? She didn't know how to answer. She didn't have to, because right then, Adiz burst into the library holding Kai. And Kai was laughing, full, belly-deep, baby laughing, at something Adiz had been doing in the hall, and the sound was so impossibly normal, so impossibly safe, that Amara forgot what she had been about to say and just opened her arms. Kai reached for her. Daejin watched them. And for the first time in 3 years, Amara Okafor didn't flinch when a man looked at her with his whole face. 6 weeks later, Amara walked into the lobby of Hanson Tower, wearing a black suit that fit her like armor. Her wrist was healed. Her ribs were healed. The scar on her eyebrow had faded to a thin pale line that her makeup could cover, but that she had decided to stop covering. Her hair was in long braids, the way she'd worn it before she met Marcus, the way her mother had taught her braid it, the way Kai was in grow up seeing his mother wear her hair. She was alone. Daejin had offered to come with her. She had said no. This was something she needed to do as herself, not as anyone's woman. The press conference was scheduled for 11 a.m. in the lobby of Hanson Tower. It was a financial press conference. Technically, the kind of carefully orchestrated event the new interim CEO of Hanson Capital Group was supposed to use to reassure investors that the company would survive the scandal of its founder being indicted on 12 federal charges. The interim CEO was Patricia Hanson. Amara walked through the revolving doors at 10:47 a.m. Security recognized her instantly. She watched their faces. 3 men she had seen every day for 3 years. 3 men who had nodded politely while watching her come into work with bruises she tried to hide, and she watched them realize in real time that the math had changed. One of them reached for his radio. Don't, Amara said quietly. Mr. Park owns this building. I'm here as his guest. The radio went back into its holster. She walked across the marble lobby. The press was already gathered. 50 journalists, cameras, microphones. The interim CEO podium was set up in front of the Hanson Capital Group logo, the same logo Amara had spent 6 months helping Marcus design when they first married, when she still believed he loved her. Patricia Hanson was already on the podium, already speaking, already in the middle of a sentence about resilience and family values and moving forward. She saw Amara. She forgot the rest of her sentence. Every camera in the room turned, in perfect synchronization, to follow Patricia's gaze. Amara walked up to the podium. She did not run. She did not hurry. She walked the way Daejin walked, like the floor was hers, like the air was hers, like the moment had been waiting for her to arrive. She stopped beside Patricia. "Hi, Patricia," she said into the microphone. Patricia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "I'd like to make a statement," Amara said, looking out at the press. "If you don't mind, as a former employee of Hanson Capital Group, the wife of its founder, and a woman who spent 3 years being beaten in this building, I think I have something to add." The lobby went silent. "My name is Amara Okafor," she said. "I came to this country in 2018. I joined Hanson Capital Group as an executive assistant in 2021. I married Marcus Hanson 6 months later. He broke my collarbone 2 weeks after our wedding. He broke my nose 6 months after that. He pushed me down a flight of stairs when I was 4 months pregnant with our son, and our son almost did not survive. Patricia made a sound, a sharp choke sound. I have medical records. I have hospital intake forms. I have photographs. I have witnesses. I have, as of 2 days ago, a sealed deposition from Marcus's former personal assistant, Sarah Chun, who watched my husband try to hire her to spike my coffee with antidepressants so he could file for emergency psychiatric custody and take our son. I have all of this because someone I owe my life to has been documenting the destruction of my life for 3 years, waiting for the day I was ready to use it. Cameras flashed. Reporters were not asking questions. Reporters were holding very still. The way people hold very still when they realize they are watching something irreversible happen. On the night of October 14th, Amara continued, Marcus Hanson tried to throw me out of the 47th floor window of this building. He told me he was going to make it look like a suicide. He told me he would take our son and tell him his mother was too weak to live. And he told me that no one would ever believe me because I am black and Nigerian and I have an accent and I am, in his words, replaceable. She turned to Patricia. You knew, Patricia. You have always known. And you came on television 3 days later and called me crazy. You called the man who saved my life a criminal. You threatened to send me back to Nigeria and put my son in foster care. You offered me $5 million to lie about what your son did to me. Amara, Patricia's voice was a whisper. Mrs. Hanson, Amara said, I'd like you to know that the recording of our phone call from 6 weeks ago, in which you threatened IC detention against me and federal charges against my sister, has just been released to the FBI's Public Corruption Division and to the New York Times. They will be running it on their website at noon today. Patricia's hand went to the podium to steady herself. And finally, Amara said, turning back to the cameras, I would like to introduce the new majority owner of Hanson Tower, who acquired controlling interest in this property in Hanson Capital Group's parent holding company at 9 a.m. this morning, after I formally retained him as legal counsel for my divorce and asset recovery proceedings. The lobby doors opened. Daejin walked in. He was wearing a black suit. He was alone. He walked across the marble floor, past the cameras, past the silent reporters, and he stopped beside Amara at the podium. He did not touch her. He did not look at her. He looked at Patricia. Mrs. Hanson, he said quietly, effective immediately, Hanson Capital Group is being dissolved. Its assets are being transferred into a trust. The trust will be administered for the benefit of every woman who has filed a complaint of harassment, assault, or wrongful termination against any Hanson Capital Group employee for the last 20 years. The fund will be called the Okafor Foundation. Your son will spend the next 25 years in a federal prison. And you, Mrs. Hanson, you will be spending the next several years explaining to the IRS and the FBI why your family foundation has been used as a tax shelter for organized criminal enterprises since 2011. Patricia made a small sound. Please understand, Daejin continued, his voice never rising, that everything I am telling you right now is going to happen whether you cooperate or not. The only choice you have is whether you are remembered as a woman who took accountability for what your family did, or as a woman who fought it and lost everything anyway. Goodbye, Mrs. Hanson. He turned to Amara. Are you ready to go? Amara looked at the cameras one last time. I'm ready. They walked out of Hanson Tower together. They did not touch. They did not need to. 40 journalists watched them leave. The footage went viral within 40 minutes. 3 months later, Amara stood on the balcony of Daejin's penthouse in Manhattan. A different penthouse in the estate. A different city than where Marcus had broken her. A different woman than the one who had sent a wrong number text from a supply closet on the 47th floor. Kai was 11 months old. He was learning to walk. He was holding on to Daejin's pant leg right now. In fact, in the living room behind her, taking unsteady steps toward Adiz, who was crouched on the floor with her arms open and tears in her eyes. Adiz had moved into the building 2 weeks ago. Daejin had insisted. Family stays close. He had said simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Adiz had cried for an hour. Amara's permanent residency had come through. Marcus had pleaded out to 22 years. Patricia Hanson had been disbarred from her own foundation and was currently living in a much smaller house in Greenwich, awaiting trial. The Okafor Foundation had received its first 300 applications in the first week, and had paid out its first 11 settlements within the first month. Amara was working again, not for anyone, for herself. The foundation was hers to run, and she was running it the way she had always wanted to run something. Carefully, kindly, with rage tucked under the kindness like a knife under silk. The balcony door opened behind her. Daejin came out, holding 2 glasses of red wine. He handed her one. For a long moment, they just stood there, looking out over the city. "I never thanked you," Amara said quietly, "for any of it. You don't have to." "I want to." He looked at her. The empty thing in his eyes had been gone for a long time now. She wasn't sure when it had left. She wasn't sure if it had ever really been there, or if she'd just been the first person he'd ever let see past it. "Daejin," she said. "Why me?" He thought about it. "Because 3 years ago," he said, "a woman walked past me in the lobby holding a wedding invitation, and she was crying, and she told me her name was Amara, and I went home that night, and I couldn't stop thinking about her. Not because she was beautiful, although she was, because she had laughed when she said her own name, the laugh of a woman who had already lost something she didn't know she was losing. And I had spent my entire life around people who lose things, money, power, lives. But I had never seen anyone lose herself in real time before. And I had been waiting for 3 years for the woman who laughed in that lobby to remember she existed." Amara's eyes filled. "I exist," she whispered. "Yes." His hand found hers on the balcony rail. The first time he had touched her, really touched her, since the night he had carried her out of Marcus's office. "You do." Inside the penthouse, Kai laughed. A full, belly-deep baby laugh. Amara didn't turn to look. She didn't need to. She knew exactly what her son sounded like when he was happy. She was going to know what her son sounded like when he was happy for the rest of her life. "Daejin," she said. "Yes." "I'm not your woman because you saved me." She turned to face him. "I want to be very clear about that. I am not anyone's woman because of what they did for me. I know. I'm your woman because I chose to be. Because I looked at you when I had every reason in the world to run, and I chose to stay. Because the wrong number turned out to be the right one. Because the universe gave both of us permission, and we both finally took it." He set down his wine glass. He took her face in his hands. He kissed her, for the first time, finally, and it tasted like cedar and red wine, and a future she had been told for 3 years she wasn't allowed to have. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers. "Amara Okafor," he said quietly. "Welcome home." Behind them, on the city skyline, the lights of Hanson Tower, her tower now, under her foundation's name, glittered in the dark. Somewhere downtown, Marcus Hanson was eating prison food. Somewhere in Connecticut, Patricia Hanson was waiting for a verdict. And in a penthouse 40 stories above Manhattan, a woman who had once typed "send help, I'm still in the building with a broken wrist and 4% battery" stood with her son and her sister and the man who had been waiting for her. Patiently, completely, for 3 full years, and she breathed. For the first time in her entire life, she breathed. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.